Hi, everybody. I've got the beautiful Gillian Bennett with us today, and I'm super excited because she's so warm and so friendly and so kind. Um, she really teaches people on how to change their relationship with food. And girls, you know how important this is. Um, she's got a her coaching really focuses on health mindset, but when I went to have a look at her website, she does a lot more as well than just sustainable eating habits and a positive relationship with food. She really embodies what she teaches. She's really in alignment, which I thought was super cool. Okay. She's going to talk about mindset, practice, habits, model of coaching. Feel free to put questions underneath, and I'm sure that she will answer them as well. Her background includes certifications in precision nutrition, ANEF sports nutrition, as well as a professional education acceptance and commitment therapy, motivational interviewing, as well as binge eating and body image fundamentals. Okay, I'm going to link her website and everything else of hers underneath. Okay, so don't worry, it's all accessible. Welcome, Gillian. Do you want to introduce yourself to everybody?
Hi, Skylar. I am so excited to be able to chat with you and chat with your audience because I think that your audience probably really understands the importance of having the mind-body connection. And I think that already understanding that is going to be so important for this conversation. And a little bit about me. I'm American. I'm from California. I live in Barcelona, Spain. And the reason why my work is so important to me is because I struggled with food in my body for most of my life. And I have memories of my mom, going to Weight Watchers meetings. She would take me with her when I was like 4 years old. And so food and body has always been a sort of really big part of my life. And it was only until I actually had some pretty problematic issues with my health because I was overtraining and under eating and had this horrible relationship with food that I took it upon myself to really understand the importance of listening to your body, working to heal your hormones in a way that actually aligns with the type of life you want to live. And so that is sort of the basis for a lot of the work that I do with clients, is helping them find stability in their nutrition that also helps them live a really freaking amazing life.
It's incredible how much energy changes everything, and health is the core of all energy.
It really is. It really is. It's so funny that you say that because I smile to myself so much. And I have these moments throughout the day where I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so proud of myself for doing the work to improve my relationship with food. I mean, not just even being so grateful for the fact that I have a healthy menstrual cycle after I didn't have a cycle for 4 years. Wow. And my hair was falling out. I was cold all the time. I would wake up in the middle of the night starving. And now I sort of catch myself throughout the day and I'll be dancing in my hallway and singing songs to my dog. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I am just such a more fun, energetic person now that I actually nourish myself with energy and eat food that I enjoy. And it's just such an incredible feeling to reflect on how far I've come.
What you're talking about is such an incredible shift. And this is one of the things I felt about you when I was looking over your stuff, not just your bio, but your actual website, is you're really hardcore in alignment. There's nothing superficial about this. And I love that, because I always teach my audience that there's a huge gap between beauty standards and health standards. There's a huge difference, and they get so confused. So how have you kind of navigated that, especially with women, when there's such they're completely different things, but they come across as the same thing, and a lot of advertising, but they're completely different things. So how did you navigate that to get this kind of rock hard alignment?
Wow, that is maybe one of the best questions I've ever been asked. And honestly, a lot of it had to do with connecting with my core values. And people hear me talk about core values and they're like, what does that have to do with my eating habits? And I'll give you an example. So for me, when I quote unquote looked the best or the fittest, was when I was living completely out of alignment with my core values. So my core values, I actually have them written on a Post-it on my wall, just because I love being able to see that every day. And so my main core values, obviously we have things that are of lesser importance, are connection, curiosity, freedom, and creativity. And for me, being able to sort of pause and be like, wait a minute, I'm not practicing creativity in my life at all. My connections are horrible. Can I curse on this podcast?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. So I was like, my connections are fucking terrible. I'm lonely. And I think also a lot of this is like, we can't not bring in the conversation around like, as a female, part of our worth has been determined by like, can you get a partner? Yeah. Like, can you have a partner? Can you find someone to be attracted to you? And for me, like, I'm about to turn 36. I'm now in a loving, absolutely incredible relationship. However, I had a very shitty and like tumultuous dating history. And so I think when we look at like beauty and health standards, I was trying so hard to reach this beauty standard that my health standards, and when we talk about health standards, physical health and mental health need to be considered together. We cannot say like, I am physically healthy, but I'm not taking a look at my mental health. And for me, both my physical health and my mental health were not great. Yeah. And so the sort of big turning point for me was being like, I say that these things are really important to me. I say that these core values are really important to me, but I don't live those core values at all in my day-to-day, because my life is revolving around like, am I eating the amount of calories I should be eating? Like, am I, making sure to avoid temptation? Am I going to the gym and, training the hours that I need to be training in the gym? And I'm like not a boring person. And I was pretty freaking boring at that period of my life. And I think that anyone listening that's like been consumed by diet culture can understand that like your personality gets like tamped down because your brain is so full of, oh my gosh, I shouldn't eat that. Oh my God, I should eat that. Oh my God, wait, how many calories are in this? Wait, how much do I weigh today? How do I look? And so for me, sort of, I guess, coming to the end of your question, how did I navigate that was being aware of like, I'm not acting in accordance with my core values and asking myself, like, what am I actually trying to achieve here? Because even if I do, find this partner that loves me and thinks I'm beautiful, like, I'm not gonna have fun with them. I'm not gonna be able to like enjoy sex with them because I literally had no sex drive. Yeah. And so if I want to be this person that I imagine myself being, like, I have to start acting like it. And so some of those things were like, I'm going to invest more in my relationships. And other things were, I need to actually start eating more food and eating enough food to feel satisfied, because when you're satisfied with what you eat physically and mentally, you're a lot less likely to be constantly thinking about food all the time.
What you've just said, actually, this is going to be like such a juicy podcast, guys, just so you know, because not only am I getting excited, but I'm getting questions here I've never asked anybody before. So this is going to be fun. So what just came to me is that because I'm a new mom, I've got a 2-year-old, right? One of the things that's been very big in both resolving women's health conditions is addressing the invisible load.
Oh right? My gosh.
But what you're discussing is something I never considered, but the way that you put words to it was so goddamn beautiful, because you just verbalized the invisible load around diet culture and beauty standards, which is the constantly, what do I eat? Do I look good enough? Am I worthy of being attractive? Am I lovable all the time, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year? And it's huge, because women cannot starve themselves both physically and emotionally, and like you said, have balanced hormones or a balanced sexuality or balanced fertility. Most health, and especially health studies, were based around men entirely, and women weren't even involved in those studies. So I've never thought of that before. So when you this load, how did it shift for you from, because you said it was all the time, and now what's it like when you're dealing with your health and your nutrition and your balance,
Yeah. So I talk to my clients about this a lot, because a lot of the women that I work with come to me and they're like, I think about food all the time. I'm either like eating like a toddler, or I am trying to be absolutely perfect with what I eat. And so the way that I describe the work that I do is helping them find that like middle ground where they care about their physical and mental health, but they also care about living a really fun life. And so the way that I talk to them about it is kind of like right now, it might be like someone screaming at you in your head. And so it's like a yell. It's like, don't eat that, you shouldn't do this, you're such a failure. And it's like a scream. And what we learn to do, and this is why mindset and like thought strategies and like understanding your brain is so important for this whole process, is because those thoughts, I don't believe ever truly disappear. They just go from being a yell to being a whisper. And so, for example, now, like I feel like I have a pretty good body image. Like I look in the mirror and like, it's either like, nah, I don't really care, or, oh, I like how I look today. But I still have some days where I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh God, like what is happening? Like you look terrible. And the difference is, it's not that like, and this is, I think, a huge misconception is people think that when you do the work on your relationship with food, on your nutrition, on your mindset is like, oh, I don't have these things anymore. No, you just get good at dealing with it. And you get really good at that. Instead of having like a 20-minute debate over whether you should eat the cookie, it becomes like a quick check-in with yourself of like, do I want the cookie? Is it going to be satisfying? Like, how is this going to leave me feeling when I'm finished? And that takes like 2 seconds. And so if it was taking up, let's say throughout the day, and I've actually done these sort of calculations with my clients where it's like, how much time are you currently spending thinking about food in your body? Let's say someone comes to me and it's like, over the course of the day, 4 hours. Cool. Yeah. If we can shrink that into like 20 to 30 minutes, like that's pretty normal. Like we have to think about what we eat. Like that requires some sort of thought. Yeah. And appearance, we live an embodied life. We can't ignore the fact that we have an appearance. And there's nothing wrong with caring about what you look like. I think the important part and the way to navigate this is understanding that like what you look like is not the most important thing about you. And so I think a question that can probably help your listeners, and this is a question that I ask new clients all the time, is what do you value about the people that you care about? And what do you think they value about you? Yeah. And when you answer that question, the noise that's telling you that all of these things matter starts to get a little bit quieter. And of course, there's like a bunch of different skills. So I talk a lot about skill building. There's a lot of different skills that we build in order for you to manage that voice. Because like I said, I went with my mom to Weight Watchers when I was 4 years old. So that means I had like decades of like body image and food bullshit to deal with. And so learning how to manage those thoughts when they come up just gives you a sense of confidence and competence in yourself. Because right now you might not have any skills to deal with those thoughts. And that's why they feel like a scream instead of a whisper.
I'm going to break, there's two or three very valuable things that I'm going to summarize and just break it down because that helps them.
100%. I love that.
Me too. So the first thing is that a lot of these patterns around body image and health are generational. So they come down the family line, and I had the exact same thing. And I remember I wasn't as young as you, but it really kicked in around my teens, because I went from being a thin child to being I had an autoimmune disease. I had an underactive thyroid, but it took them 2 years to diagnose it. So suddenly I was packing on the weight, and I was dragged to every Slim Fast meeting. The calories were restricted. Everything was just cut out. I remember being sent up a mountain with a Slim Fast bar.
Oh my gosh.
Because my mother believed that the social price of being overweight was so high, and she was so terrified of the bullying that would come, and that she thought it was a cheaper, when parents are like, I'll beat them so other people don't.
Yeah.
If you think fatism is bad now in our culture, the 70s, 60s, it was so bad, particularly because my family's Brazilian, it was so bad. They were so cruel to women that were overweight. It was hardcore stuff. It was what I think was so powerful for my journey around mindset was understanding that this stuff was all lies. It wasn't truth. It wasn't how you get healthy. It wasn't how you get beautiful, right? Because beauty is an energy. It's not just a state of being. It's who you are. It's not your body and what it looks like, right? But it's we're getting a bit into woo-woo energy there. But then we're kind of moving into this space where we're talking about understanding that voice gets quieter, but because we're constantly being programmed every day. Like if the average person listens to 200 to 300 ads a day, telling them in subliminal psychological programming that they are not beautiful enough, that they are not enough, right? Whether it's the Tampax ad or the makeup ad or which we think are different, but it's not. The message is the same. You need my product to be worthy. You need my product to be beautiful, right? Perfume ad, makeup ad, you added up 300 a day, even if you're just scrolling Instagram or TikTok. And we're going, why doesn't this voice go away? And it's like, well, because it's proactively being nurtured, right? It's the reason we have to do like little bits of work consistently is because the moment you turn on the TV, the moment you go into your phone, you are proactively being told that you are not enough. So fear is the loud screaming voice, and it's coming in all the time. And then we get to kind of go, no, I don't really want that in there. But you fall asleep in the car, you fall asleep in front of the TV, and that's being programmed. Right. So those are three huge areas. I'll let you choose which one you want to dive into because they were really juicy topics. But how do you navigate those with your clients and address those as you're moving through the mindset work?
Yeah. I mean, I think you brought up something really important is that, like you said, the word lies. And I think what it is that we often take our thoughts as fact, and our thoughts are not facts. And this is actually one of the things that comes up a lot in my client sessions is learning a skill called cognitive diffusion. And this is a skill that is talked a lot about in acceptance and commitment therapy. If you are someone that is in therapy, you may have talked about this with your therapist, and it is a mindset skill. And it's essentially the skill of understanding that, like, the thoughts that I have, those are not data. They are simply thoughts. And so we can actually separate ourselves from them and observe them. And I like to think almost like our brain is a fishbowl and our thoughts are just like a ton of fish in the bowl. And so if we can use the skill of cognitive diffusion, which a really simple way to do this is to just say, I am having the thought that, like, let's say, oh my gosh, I'm so fat. You can take that and say, I'm having the thought that I'm fat. That creates a tiny bit of distance between that thought, and you can actually take it out and observe it. And we can start to think critically about the way that we're thinking. And we can also, like, while yes, so I think I heard it put really, really well. It was like, it's not our fault that we feel the way that we do about our bodies, but it is our responsibility to change it. And I think that summed it up really well, because it's like, I think we can often take the victim mentality of like, well, what can I do about it? Like, I have to look this way because nobody's going to love me. And so part of me is like, no, go the like evidence-based route. Because the fact is like, there is a lot of evidence to support that mindful eating behaviors, intuitive eating behaviors, and like non-diet behaviors support overall feelings of well-being in your body, support overall health, even support overall weight management. But also I can say in my personal experience, I've gained weight. I have no idea how much weight I've gained. You can't see me probably right now, if you're listening to this in a podcast. I'm still a quote unquote straight size human. And so I know that I have that privilege, but my body has changed significantly since I was in this pursuit of the quote unquote perfect body. However, my self-worth has also increased significantly, mostly because I stopped looking for self-worth in appearance. And what happened is like that fear that we talked about of like, I'm not going to be loved, I'm not going to be worthy, whatever. It actually, like that fear, I continued to feed it when I was stuck in this belief of like, I need to look like this, otherwise no one's going to love me, is like, I fed that. And when I stopped feeding it intentionally, I was like, I'm not going to do this anymore. It was an intentional, like, nope, fuck this. This is not how I'm going to live my life. And my quote unquote attractiveness, I have felt more attractive since gaining weight, since letting go of those ideals, and actually have had more quote unquote success in sort of like the realm of dating and friendships and connections, because I've put so much more effort into who I am as a human and how can I like feel my best? How do I nourish myself? How do I open up brain space for stuff that isn't food and body? And so it's like, we have this belief that, oh, well, this person's not going to find me attractive. It's like, well, your body's going to change for the rest of your life. So yes, we want to be with someone that we find physically attractive, but like who we are as a person is so much more important than the beauty industry leads us to believe.
It's such a huge deal. It's like, this is such a huge deal. And there's so many things that people don't consider, but it's such a big fear for, I would say, for both men and women. And it's only something I've become more aware of because I've got 3 older stepkids and then my bubba. And particularly my older stepson, he went through body dysmorphia. He went through like huge amounts of pressure to, get the 6-pack and get the muscles, and the zero self-esteem on who I am as a person, everything being about appearance and everything being about finances. And that's when I was like, okay, this whole because their generation is more Instagram, whereas ours was kind of like more Facebook kind of peeking in.
Yeah.
You know? Whereas theirs is like, they've had it since they were teens. They've had their phones since they were 10. It's a constant bombardment. But this idea that our worth, like you said, is based on the body count, right? Because your body will change throughout your whole life. If you're a woman for many other reasons than than just what you eat or what you don't eat. For starters, your water weight fluctuates monthly based on your estrogen levels, not having nothing to do with what you eat or how much you work out. And then if you include pregnancy in the process, it's a whole different beast. And if you believe that your lovability is based on your body changing, it creates a crisis of identity that will then create your worst fear, because it's not about how you look so much as about who you are.
Yeah.
You don't know who you are. How can someone love you? Because there's no one there to find.
So I do want to mention something, because I think that this ties into a lot of like the generational trauma that we talked about. Yeah. Is that like, you may have been told as a child that like, or either told or insinuated via actions by your parents or by family members, like, I'll love you more if you weigh less, or I'll love you, or I'll love you more if you grow tall. I don't know, a million different things. And so I think a big part of this is like being able to, again, like separate thought from fact, and also realize that like your job as a human is to continue to grow and evolve. And so like, even though you've held these beliefs, you can choose to start working towards not having those beliefs anymore, which doesn't mean like, I'm not telling you it's going to be easy. I'm not telling you that like, I'm again, like in my mid 30s, like I was really able to overcome a lot of these struggles, like at 30 years old. So it's not like all of a sudden one day you're gonna be like, oh, cool. Like I don't buy into diet culture anymore. Okay, great. Let's continue on with my life. But it's like a really interesting process if you decide that you're willing to kind of throw yourself in and understand like, what is it that makes me me, and how do I continue to act in a way that makes me the most me that I can be.
Going like what you said at the very beginning around core values, it's how I navigate everything in my life, because so much of integrity comes from, is this about my values and me being authentically who I am? Or is this about people pleasing? Is this about money? Is this about popularity? Is this about, well, when you constantly check in with your values, and I use it for everything from behavior to health to it helps so much to have like that solid, barrier to check beliefs against. And particularly, gosh, have you heard Brené Brown?
I've probably consumed every piece of content Brené Brown has ever made,
right? So when so for guys, if you haven't, some of you will and some of you haven't, but for those of you who haven't, when she talks about, she's doing the book, like she did the book, The Gifts of Imperfection, but there's a whole section in there around her family moving around so much because she was an army brat, and her wanting to belong so bad because she wanted to be in the teams at school, and her being 10 years old and going on the cabbage diet, right? Because of the weigh-ins and the thinness and so much. For boys and for them as well, but they're the opposite. So where we're like, we're too fat, they're like, I don't have enough muscle, right? And they're like pinching their arms because they're like, if I'm not big enough, I don't get into the team, I won't belong. And most of our trauma, especially when I'm working with people, comes from this fear of, if I'm not thin enough, I won't belong. If I'm not thin enough, I won't be lovable. And it is unconscious. Most of it, nobody ever said, oh, they should never have said this to you. When you stood on the scales in front of an entire class, whether it was to get into a ballet group or into a cheerleading squad or into, what's it called? The Miss pageant, whatever, or the singing competition, right? Or when you were like given the dress to fit into, all of that counts as body image or beauty standards trauma, especially if it was never even a conversation or words put around it so you could navigate it as a kid. So what the beginning of dismantling this belief structure is realizing that those are beliefs. Even if they are social standards and contracts, they are still beliefs that are adopted by the collective consciousness, right? And then it's kind of looking at, where did this start for me? What is my story around this? And then you can take ownership of that story, because that's the next part that I love about about Brené Brown is that if you cannot own your story, then you hustle for worthiness, right? So what is your food story? What is your health story? What is your beauty standards story? And start untangling so that you can find your values. You'd be like, okay, that's what they chose for me. What do I choose for me? Who do I want to be in that space? That's what I'm hearing you say. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I love that you put it that way. And I think a lot about this, like belonging versus fitting in. And also what you said before about like using your values as sort of a guiding, like a North Star for your decisions. And I wanted to give a little bit of context, because I think sometimes when people, like if individuals aren't really familiar with their core values, I think it's something that's often talked about a lot in business, but not necessarily in your personal life. And one of the reasons that this can be so powerful is it can give you direction. And a lot of us feel lost. Like a lot of us are sort of like, oh, I'm making these decisions, but I don't know if they kind of sit right with me, or we don't even ever really check in, right? You know, we have like a quote unquote goal weight because that's what our mom's goal weight was, or because that's the size pants that we fit in at like this time in our lives. And so when it comes specifically down to like nutrition and body image and how we interact with our bodies in general, we can look at, I'll take connection, for example, which I mentioned is one of my values. When we look at dieting often really limits our connection. Why? Because we are trying to make sure we're eating perfectly. We're the person like bringing Tupperware to the family party, or we're the person that's like, oh, I'm not going to go to this event because there's, XYZ food there, or not getting ice cream with your family because, you can't have that many calories. And so in many ways, dieting not only disconnects us from the people around us, but it also disconnects us from ourselves, because dieting gives you a set of external rules to follow for your nutrition, rather than using the internal cues that can be actually really fucked up if you've dieted for a long time, and it takes some reestablishing of those cues. But when we look at like, okay, cool. So what are decisions that align with my value of connection when it comes to food? Is like, maybe you say, hey, you know what? I am going to say yes to having ice cream with my family because that is an experience that I really value. And so this is where having skills to make that fit into your life, if, healthful eating is important to you, is like, hey, you know what? Having ice cream with my family is really important for connection. I'm going to choose to have a smaller serving of ice cream. I'm going to enjoy the hell out of it. And I'm going to feel so good and so connected with my family after that. And that is the kind of decision that aligns with your values and brings a lot of value to your life. Whereas I think we often get really stuck in this sort of like all or nothing. Like I'm either perfectly on my diet and controlling my body, or I am enjoying my life. And finding that balance through using your values is so powerful. And this is,
I'm going to put a little caveat on here, because you guys are used to listening to me talk about diet for health purposes, right? So we're talking about like diet and nutrition for like body image and resolving generational and beauty trauma. It's a whole different bag of trauma if you eat something is going to throw you into like a diabetic fit or trigger your autism, or so. This is like, just so you know, I see you guys with your neurodivergence, and we're speaking indirectly, but we're like, please don't mess with your diets or whatever based on what we're saying. If there's a different standards, right, or different consequence for you than there's for everyone else, just in case. Nice little caveat, trigger warning.
Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And I think, so diet is like just what you eat. Dieting, like the act of dieting, I think when I speak about dieting, that is more of like the diet culture approach. Whereas like your diet, like I have a diet, it's the food that I eat on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So that is kind of where I'm going with that. Whereas like if you're making choices about what you eat based on your health necessities, that's different. Because I imagine health is a value of yours. You value your health. And so if you are making food decisions because they align with that value of health, it's a lot different than saying I'm restricting X, Y, or Z food because I'm afraid that I'm going to gain weight. And those are two very different things.
But this is the next rabbit hole I'm going to kind of tug you down, because this is where I spend most of my time, is the transitioning. Because if you have a very strict diet for, a year or 2 years to completely repair your gut or completely repair your nervous system, right? To give your body like 3 rounds of 3 months to really sort out your gut biome, or to really undo the nerve damage, or to have recovery in, from a deep sports injury with inflammation. And there is a transition. There's, your body does go through like phases. So where you might have required something a lot stricter in the beginning, you then transition out. And that is where you're this is where this conversation applies. It's how do you transition out to where your diet allows you more connection and you're still keeping health as your core value and you're not damaging yourself, but you're allowing more connection in. And that that's a huge deal, because if you've had to, for me, it was a huge deal. I remember there was a stage in my life where I had to watch everything I ate because I was allergic to a lot of antibiotics and I was trying to resolve a serious gut infection. Right. And to do that naturally takes a long time. Whereas if you have the help with the drugs, it goes very quickly. But then coming out, I was afraid of eating. And I with little kids as well that are resolving like a gluten allergy or whatever, and then they've resolved it, their gut's back to normal, and they're terrified of eating. It's so like heartbreaking to see. And then when they start to come out of it, that's a huge transition.
Yeah. It's a huge transition, and it can be really tough because sometimes I think, and this is where the mindset part comes in, is that when we approach something like that with like, I am choosing to make these decisions for my health, it feels a lot different than I have to do this because otherwise XYZ will happen. And I think that this is where like any of you listening that do have to follow a very specific dietary protocol in order to improve your health or improve any pre-existing conditions, I think that this is where, if it does feel restrictive, where we can shift that is like, I'm making this choice because my health is important to me. And when you start to take, and you mentioned taking ownership, and I think this is where you get to take ownership. And there's a lot of power, like when we talk about motivation and desire to reach certain goals, the power of choice and feeling like you are making this choice is so important. And this is where like a lot of the coaching that I do with my clients is like, I won't ever tell them you need to do this. I'll ask like, does this seem like something that you'd like to take on? Like, how can we create a structure or a system that's going to make this easier for you? Because when you feel like you are making your own decisions about something, it's very different than some authoritative figure telling you you have to do X, Y, or Z. And it's a lot more likely that you're going to want to continue with that thing if you feel like it's your choice.
And it's exactly what you're like, gosh, this inner teenager thing when it comes to food is huge. So if you like rebelled against authority by not doing anything that the authority fit, then you rebel against your own authority. And until you kind of heal that wound, right, you don't get to take ownership. You don't get to have authority because you're confusing authority with abuse. But authority is the power to make your own choices, to take responsibility, to choose how you move forward. So it's a very important thing to like dissolve the enmeshment around. So enmeshment is where you pick up other people's beliefs versus yours. Mm-hmm. You need to be the power in your world. You need to be the authority in your life, right? Especially in your body, because no one else is in there with you. No one else knows exactly how it works except you. No matter how many times they've done it, it's different for you because your body is unique. But when we're discussing this voice, I think particularly with long-term chronic illness or autoimmune conditions, I think what you said is that it often is a scream. The disease becomes the scream, right? You do anything wrong and you have an immediate consequence, immediate pain, immediate inflammation. But as you progress, it doesn't always completely go away. I have seen it completely go away for many people, but it doesn't always, right? But it does become a whisper. It does stop being a scream and go to, if you follow your health as your blue point. And where this comes in with our work, with my work around intuition, is that we tend to work around core wounds. And one of the core wounds that creates long-term health conditions is a neglect wound. And most of us are unconsciously conditioned, especially women, to neglect ourselves.
Oh my gosh, this could be like a 4-hour podcast.
It's too much fun.
You're so right. And I think as women, we're sort of conditioned to like, oh, I'll take care of everybody else and then I'll take care of myself. Or, which I think is almost worse, is this like, I will only take care of myself so I can take care of other people. And it's like, that's just as bad or potentially worse, because it's like, I'm only valuable because of my capacity to take care of other people. Like, what is that?
Oh,
But
it's so deep. Look, it's so deep. I didn't realize how deep it was until after I gave birth to my son, because I had to have an emergency C-section and they sliced through the 4 layers of muscle, right? And I remember my husband saying to me, I'm going to go to bed early. I'm really tired. And me going, of course, you have to take care of yourself. And only realizing about an hour later, after he'd gone to bed early, that not only had I not slept for 4 days, but that I was in so much pain, I couldn't get out of my chair to pick up the crying baby. But my brain immediately went to, of course, I have to take care of him. Despite the fact that I was still in full-blown recovery mode, I was in a huge amount of pain. And it's so deep that literally you can be bleeding and you're still like, no, you take care of you.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it comes from this like societal belief that like women shouldn't be demanding, women are supposed to take care of everyone. And it's like, we can understand where this came from. Like women for centuries have been this caregiver, have been the ones that do the cooking and the cleaning, and they sort of like take care of the family and make sure that the man is okay to go. Obviously, we're talking like heterosexual cisgender relationships. Is like the man can go out and like provide for the family. And I think here it like takes a little bit of a reset to be like, hey, that's not the demands of our life anymore necessarily. Like there's many situations in which either there are two females in the home or two males in the home, or two individuals that are completely gender fluid. And that traditional role doesn't necessarily need to be taken on by one of those individuals.
Even look, let's put it this way, because this is one of the best things about studying this stuff in depth, is that when you actually look at it, what a man is taught is that if he works 40 to 60 hours a week, he is entitled to a woman working 170-hour weeks to support that. And there's no heterosexual relationship that can justify that kind of emotional sacrifice. And it comes out of your sex life. It comes out of your ability to parent well, because nobody can do things from a place of exhaustion for years and not pay some kind of price. But it's so invisible, right? Because when you're staying up with the kids and then you don't have energy in the morning, and people will actually say, oh, why doesn't she have energy for sex anymore? Why doesn't she have energy for exercise anymore? And we're taught like it's an excuse and we're not taking responsibility. But neglect is a real form of abuse. And if you are being neglected, if you really are under this huge invisible load, and you're normally, especially as a woman, hiding it from other people because you feel ashamed you can't handle it all, right? It's for real. It's not fake. And then you're sitting there being even harder on yourself and beating yourself up the way other people are kind of beating up on you because you don't have language to wrap around what's actually going on. And I would get this from my mother and from my husband. And it was only when I started really reading that I was like, no, this isn't actually right. Even if, because I did work all the way through, but even if I hadn't, I was like, this is still completely out of balance. You put work in there and you still have to come home. You still have to do it. And it's still insane. And like you said, it perpetuates the abuse, because then everyone gets used to this idea that they don't have a contribution to make in the household, that they don't have a contribution to make to your life. And it only gets worse as age increases. It doesn't get better, right? It's like a disease. It's progressive.
Yeah. I think a lot of this comes from the fact that like we sort of adopt the patterns that we see in childhood. And then some of us adopt them in a way where we sort of take them on, and other like, I think others of us adopt it in the sense of like, this is exactly what I don't want. And so we go completely in the other direction, which isn't necessarily helpful either. I think this is why, so my favorite nutrition coaching clients to work with are also clients that are in therapy. Those are like, woo, all right, we're good. This is going to be amazing. Because a lot of it has to do with communication and compassion. And especially as females, we're really good at being compassionate and empathetic towards other people.
Yep.
And this is actually, I have a group coaching program, and self-compassion is one of the focuses for this. And you might be like, well, what does that have to do with nutrition? Because we are so self-critical, and that self-criticism often leads to changes in how we eat. And especially if you're an emotional eater, a lot of it probably has to do with your self-criticism. And we often look, and I would say, I feel like I can pretty confidently say that most of the women listening are probably like, yeah, I'm really compassionate towards other people. I'm a super compassionate person. How compassionate are you with yourself? And I want to make a really clear distinction here that self-compassion is not self-pity or self-indulgence. Self-compassion is not being like, oh, poor me, I have so much work to do. Or it's not being like, oh, poor me, I'm going to drink a whole bottle of wine tonight. Like that's not self-compassion. Self-compassion, I don't know how much you've talked about self-compassion on your podcast, or if like giving just a little bit of background for people could be helpful.
Go for it, because we never know who's listening. We talk about self-compassion in the courses, but not so much in the podcast. Go for it. Tell them.
Okay. So there's 3 main components of self-compassion. And if self-compassion is interesting for you to find out more about, there's a researcher named Kristen Neff, who is like the foremost self-compassion researcher. She's incredible. I think she has like a 5-day intro course or something like that. Anyways, so there's 3 main components. And so those 3 main components are common humanity versus isolation. So for example, you've had a really hard day. And one of the ways that you could practice self-compassion is being like, a lot of like, it's normal to have a hard day. Like so many other people have really hard days. And that acknowledgement of not like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't feel like this day was so hard. What is wrong with me? Like that acknowledgement of the common humanity can be really powerful. Then we have self-kindness versus self-judgment. And we often say things like, I shouldn't have done that. Like, I can't believe I am such a failure, or what's wrong with me? Those are all signs of judgment. Self-kindness is speaking to yourself. And this is where it can be really helpful to almost think like, how would I interact with my best friend if she was in this situation? And you would speak to her with kindness. You wouldn't speak to her like an asshole, probably. And then the third component of self-compassion is mindfulness versus over-identification. And this is where we can often really identify with our problems and be like, this is a part of me. This is who I am. I'm just a person that's like this. Or we can practice mindfulness and say, I'm noticing that this is happening. Or this, or like we talked about earlier with our thoughts, like I'm having the thought that XYZ. And so as we practice these 3 components and we turn them in towards ourselves, we can really start to practice self-compassion and lessen that scream of self-criticism.
I love that. Like, I love that so much. I think that is insane. This energy of common humanity. And it gets so lost, especially with when I work with illness and disease, this idea that other people have walked the same path. It's one of the ways that you get locked in, as you think you're the only one, right? When it's so obvious that everybody suffers health challenges, we go into self-pity, right? And that really keeps you isolated. Gosh, I'm going to let that sink in for a second, because I like, it really went in, and I can't stress how much I love that. I really can't stress how much I love that. Where it comes in as like a metaphysical thing is that, so I studied Course in Miracles for a long time, and I practiced Course in Miracles for a long time. Marianne Williamson was one of my gateways into metaphysics. But one of the core concepts is self-hatred masquerading as self-love.
Right? Oh God. That is like, wow. Okay. I mean, if you like go back about 30 minutes in this conversation, when we were talking about like diet culture and worthiness, is like, there is so much self-hatred in this. I have to look a certain way. I have to fit in a certain size. Like, oh yeah. But we think, and this is actually, I was working with a client recently who she kept telling me, I feel like I'm not being the best version of myself, but in her head, and she's got 2 kids, she's in her mid 40s. In her head, her best version of herself was the version of herself that was under eating, over exercising, and fitting into pants that she wore before she had twins. So sorry, I cut you off there, but
it's true. This is the exact example of self-love masquerading as self-hatred masquerading as self-love. And this is what you were saying about self-compassion being different from self-pity or self-indulgence, right? Yeah. So it comes into, because so much of it masquerades as, well, if I love myself, then I would starve myself. Well, if I love myself, then I would fit into those pants. Well, that's not self-love.
And here's the thing is like, maybe you would like, and this is where it can be really confusing, and where within the nutrition space, it can be so helpful to like look for those individuals that use terminology like it depends, because here's the thing. And so a lot of the work that I do with clients is around mindful eating practices. And people will ask me like, am I going to gain weight? Am I going to lose weight? And I'm like, it depends. some individuals start practicing mindful eating and they find it really easy to lose some of the extra body fat that they've had. And part of that is because maybe they were restricting and then binging. Maybe they were mindlessly overeating. Other people might gain weight. In my case, I gained weight. Why? Because I needed to. My body needed that. And then other people, their body doesn't change at all. And so I think that when we kind of look at like, okay, well, what does my best self look like? Like the answer is it depends.
It does depend. And everybody, like you are, gosh, like one of the things that I do constantly is go back to, like you said, like, because I work in medical intuition, so many people want to use their intuition or their spirituality to bypass actually looking at what's going on in their body, bypass getting the results, bypass getting the tests, bypass letting the body speak, which is ironic because they're studying intuition, right? But your body is genuinely not the same as other people's bodies. So you could be on the exact same diet, but have a higher level of cortisol, or be on the exact same diet, but have insulin resistance, or be on the exact same diet and having it like one of my best friends, literally, you know, the crazy stuff we get from doctors. She was really struggling with energy levels and she's in her late 30s. And the doctor was like, oh, you're fine. You know, this is just age. And I was like, you need another doctor. You need to get the tests, right? No one died and made him a psychic. You need another doctor. And even if you work with somebody, you need to get the tests. And it turned out her adrenal glands were pumping out cortisol at 4 times the level of a normal person. So it doesn't matter. Like she was doing all kinds of crazy things because of the beauty stuff. She was going on the lion diet and despite, it doesn't matter what advice you give people, they're doing it from a place of trauma and so they will do what they feel they need to do to get the love that they think they need, right? But if she hadn't gone through, and so many of my clients are the same thing, unless you find the courage to advocate for yourself, so you have transparency as to how your body works and the issues that you are dealing with, and bear in mind that can change. You may have been dealing with a thyroid issue like I was in my teens, but then be dealing with a completely different issue in a different stage of your life, right? It can change. The mindfulness is like, it's an external representation of what's going on in your mind, but your body, you need to be so present and so proactive in what is actually going on, and how do I create an environment that will nurture this body back to the health that it deserves.
Yeah, I think back to when I kind of realized that not having a period was a really big problem, because for a while I was so stuck in this like diet culture fitness environment that I was like, oh, I don't have a period. Amazing. Like I never have to deal with my period. And then I was like, wait a minute, this is a problem. And as I started to educate myself around the menstrual cycle and the issues that not having a menstrual cycle can cause, I started to advocate for myself with doctors. And this is to say, like, I'm not like anti-Western medicine by any means, but the fact is that in many different professions, or actually in all different professions, there are people that aren't going to listen to you, and there are people that are. And for me, I had to really strongly advocate for myself. And had I not had the curiosity and the self-awareness and the mindfulness practice that I have about my own body, I probably would have ended up back on hormonal birth control, which is exactly what I did not want to do, because that was my doctor's recommendation. And instead, I did not go on hormonal birth control, and I did my own research. I talked to other individuals that had gone through the same thing. I followed other doctors that talk about menstrual cycle issues, and was able to regain, I have an extraordinarily healthy period now. This is not to say like disregard what your doctor says, but this is to say that there are individuals in every profession that are just not going to listen to you.
Look, I'm exactly with you in that sense of, I am completely for Western medicine. I'm for all medicine.
Yeah.
But I'm for medicine, and anybody that claims in my mind to be a doctor and hasn't learned how to listen is like a therapist that hasn't learned how to listen. So this, and on average, it's exactly like with the sexism. Most women have to go to more than 6 doctors before they'll find someone that will listen. And that is not
we
fair.
don't have that time. Like if we go back to the invisible load, it's like,
we don't have that time.
I'm trying to run a business here. I don't have time to go to 6 doctors in a month.
You know to prove that you actually have a real health concern. Most women won't even go. By the time you're going, it's because it's really not okay.
Yeah.
Right. We put it off and put it off and put it off. And they don't, like these, I remember going because I had chronic and consistent thrush and I could not get rid of it. And the first doctor I spoke to, I must have been 25? The first doctor and at this point I'd had thrush for 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
2 years.
That sounds so uncomfortable.
They were like, oh my God. And it hurt. It hurt when I was having sex. It was ridiculously embarrassing all the time. I had to wear like pads, and they kept going, no, just keep using the Canistan. And I was like, I can't keep taking this every week. And even if I did, it's not working. I took it for 6 months straight and it's not going away. Right. And they were like, maybe you have an STI. And I'm like, you mean the last 6 STI tests that you ran that came back negative are no longer accurate?
Yeah. And well, it's tough. Like I do have a lot of compassion for the medical field because I know how limited they are with their time. Like, and so that it's hard. And I think it sort of falls, and this goes with like nutrition information, medical information, anyone. I think it falls on, like, obviously we want to be able to like trust that the professional that we are working with is going to be able to help us. But like, I'm a nutrition coach. How many absolutely like terrible nutrition coaches are there out there where they're like, literally, they're just like, oh, you want to solve any problem? Like just go keto. And I'm like, that is not like, you can't just tell everyone to do the same thing. Or nutrition coaches that are like, I lost weight. Now I can coach other people to do it. Right. And so this is where I think, and this is a big debate where it's like, well, who does the responsibility fall on, right? Does it fall on the consumer or does it fall on the professional? And for me, the answer is both. Is like, we want to do our best as professionals where like we are continuously trying to improve our knowledge and our experience and learn more. And also knowing that like scientific research is constantly changing, constantly. And then on the other side, like as the consumer, like we want to do our due diligence. And obviously that's complicated because Google is like a cesspool of filth. But at the same time, I think this is where it's like, and I don't have an answer for this because finding the balance between reputable information and then finding a professional that can actually help you, like it's hard. There are so many people out there that need support with their nutrition and they're jaded. You know, I've talked to people, they're like, well, I worked with a nutrition coach and I hated it. And so now they won't even consider working with me because that other person was terrible. Whereas like, and I'm sure you come across this as well.
I've been spiritual teaching since I was 17. And it's exactly what you said. In every profession, there are people that don't have integrity. And they're often very well hidden. You know, covert narcissism is a thing. It's not obvious, and they may have high levels of success, right? Because sales and marketing skills are not therapeutic and helping skills. They're completely different beasts. But I think where I focus on, and I think it's probably because I work with people that are just so vulnerable. I work with like small children. Is that, yes, it should ideally be both. But when you don't have any guarantee, and you being able to advocate for yourself is the only way, especially in Britain, it's very controlled. In London, it's a bit better because I lived in London for 8 years, but up in Scotland, they don't have a private system. You can't just go and find somebody easily. It's not an effortless thing to do. And where you're not being able to advocate for yourself and say, look, I need you to have a look at my endocrine system. I need to speak to a consultant around gynecology. I need to have referrals to this. No, like in Scotland, the law is you have to have 4 miscarriages before you're allowed to speak to a professional. 4.
Oh my God.
So it's like, this is legalized sexism, right? There's no way a man would walk in and have an issue with his genitals and be told he has to
a man had like 4 erectile dysfunctions, he would be like calling the prime minister.
Here it's 4. And I had clients literally said, oh, I've had 3 miscarriages. Now I can speak to the consultant. And I'm like, no, you have a legal right to speak to them. The moment you know you have a health condition, you don't even have to wait for the first miscarriage. You can say, there's something off about my hormones. I want to speak to somebody who specializes in the endocrine system. I want to speak to some. And it's not about being rude. And it's not about saying F doctors. It's about being like, okay, my health is my responsibility. And if I do not speak up, it can lead to osteoporosis. It can lead to infertility. It can lead to Alzheimer's. It can lead to cancer. And it's not easy. And I think that it feels like a kick in the gut when you're already vulnerable and when you're already sick to have people going, oh, you're just the crazy hypochondriac person. And it takes a lot of self-compassion to breathe through that and go, I'm not going to get aggressive. I'm not going to get crazy. I'm just going to stand my ground until I get the treatment that is required for me to solve this problem. But you know, I'm very much like you, not only because I've done a lot of work around this, because my health conditions came in so young. Like I was 11 years old. I had no idea how to advocate for myself.
Yeah.
Right? So I spent 3 years dealing with a very serious autoimmune condition that then caused three neurodivergent conditions. It caused my dyslexia. It caused my dysgraphia. So that I did, because people were like, oh, you know, she's a girl and there's nothing wrong. So it's that at that stage, I think that then the burden falls more on the professionals because children can't advocate for themselves, and it falls more on the parents. But I did so much work on, like I said, not holding other people that have nothing to do with what somebody else did to me in the present now, but that energy of I'm going to stand my ground and I'm going to make sure that the health concerns are addressed and they're not just bypassed or silenced, or that I'm avoiding even talking to a doctor because I don't like my doctor, right? If you don't like them, change them. Don't get into an argument with them. It's not worth it. But it's that energy of please just don't start avoiding a doctor or the test because you dealt with someone you didn't like. It's like what you're saying, don't avoid the nutritionist, don't avoid if you had people that you don't like, congratulations, common humanity. Everyone's met a teacher or a healer or a nutrition or a doctor that they don't like, but don't let it silence you, don't let it stop you from getting the healthcare that you need, because that can be deadly.
The way that I like to phrase this is, if you got a bad haircut, would you avoid hairdressers for the rest of your life? Or would you just find another hairdresser?
Just find someone that can be with you, that can sit with you. Your health journey is a tough thing to have someone sit, even when people love you, exactly because they're scared of losing you or being with your pain is difficult. Health can be a major trigger, area, but 100%. Change the hairdresser, and do it, like you said, with this. I like a little bit of humor in there, do a little playfulness, a little bit of humor, instead of taking it so deeply personally, but just don't avoid it, because that's a dangerous road.
Definitely.
Okay. Would you like to just summarize a little bit, and then we've come to the end, guys. We've been here an hour, and I could talk to her 4 hours. So I just a little bit about what you do, where they can find you, how you can help them, and then we're going to close this one up.
Amazing. This was such a great conversation. Thank you for having me. So you can find me, I'm very active on Instagram, and you can find me at Bite Size Nutri. So bite size, like bite size candy bars. And then Nutri, it's like nutrition without the TION at the end. And I post a ton of content around mindful eating. I post a lot about like shifting away from the diet mindset, and a lot around body image. I also have my own podcast, the Bite Size Nutrition Podcast. There's a lot of discussion around body image, a lot of discussion around creating balance within your nutrition. And I do share a lot of my own personal story there as well. And I work with individuals on one-on-one and a group coaching basis. My group coaching program is really about finding that middle ground and learning how to manage the difficult thoughts that come with letting go of dieting. So not your specific diet, but letting go of like the dieting that comes from diet culture, and learning how to listen to more values-based decisions and make more values-based decisions. So that's a really great program for anyone that struggles with sort of that on-off dieting mentality, anyone that is trying to shift away from a strict diet, or that just wants to be more in touch with their mindful eating and unconditional permission to eat skills. And with that, I think that's all I have for you today.
Oh, thank you so much. I enjoyed myself so much. You guys can find all of Gillian's details below, and I'm so excited for you to get more familiar with her work. Over and out, guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day.